Welcome to the 335, EID GE 335, the social cultural aspects of design class. This class is relatively unique to Chaminade. There's very few universities that teach it, in large part just because you have to have a sort of peculiar set of cross-disciplinary backgrounds to sort of get this stuff together. Especially here in Hawaii, it's tremendously useful, especially if you're in the design professional here. Because you're frequently working with clients that are from Asia or some other part of the world that do not have the same logics to the use of space and sort of especially the ritual aspects of space that we take up for granted as sort of being the American norm. If you're familiar with the design profession here, there's a lot of stories about people making rather egregious errors about their client's needs or assessing what their client would want, and a huge amount of conflict resulting out of that when they just basically cross-cultural misunderstanding. So this class is basically looking at how the way that we perceive and shape and space and place shape how we actually function within it. So if you would, the main theme of this class is how much more important perception is than reality. And this makes it very different than the way, especially design classes are oftentimes taught, which is sort of sort of a very functional aspect of sort of the physics or whatever of space and place. So a very, very different way of looking at it. You can see that in the text that are available. This is an online class. We moved it online this semester because people are having troubles with it conflicting with other classes. So by moving it online, we just sort of free people's schedule up. So, this is where it's going to be from now on. Having said that, online classes, as you probably are familiar with, have both benefits and disadvantages. The benefits are you're not stuck to a particular time and place to get things done. The downside is you have to have a tremendous amount of discipline to get things done on schedule because you don't have a class structure to sort of force you to keep on task. So just be warned that that's the sort of negative aspect of online classes, and be very aware that you should download the Canvas calendar or whatever uses a calendar to basically make sure that your assignments get done on time. I have very little sympathy for people that just don't get stuff done on time. Granted, you've got a lot of stuff to do, but at some point, it's just the reality of taking classes. Everything's on a schedule. For this class, there's a set of readings. I think all of them you'll find very, very useful. The first one is actually quite old, and basically, in many ways, sort of started formally this whole area of socio-cultural aspects of design, or more accurately, socio-cultural perceptions of reality. This was Hall's work that he did on the hidden dimension back basically on works started in the 1930s, but sort of completed in the 50s. This work, on one hand, is dated. It was published in the 60s. On the other hand, it's considered such a seminal piece of work that no one's bothered to come up with a newer version of it because basically he just did it in the sense that it's pretty much covered. So while some of the examples might be pretty dated, the actual concepts and arguments that he's making are still generally accepted to the extent that that's probably one reason why you don't see a lot of supplemental work simply because everyone just sort of moved on from it. Okay, so like this was the foundation, then you add to it. An example of the adding would be Gallagher's work, the house thinking. This is a really, really good book, especially for interior design professionals, but also just people that travel a lot, because what she's looking at is basically in the European, especially the British and American view of place and space, how all the different rooms in the house actually are constructed based on our sort of sociocultural histories and perceptions, among other things, of what should be there. This is a huge area that I don't think design really spends enough time at all looking at, which is sort of people's sort of expectations of norm. What should a kitchen have? Or what is a kitchen? And the only time you ever see this is when you do watch one of those shows on Discovery or Travel Channel or something where people are moving to another culture in another place, and they suddenly find that all of a sudden the house doesn't work. It doesn't have the stuff where it's supposed to. And so this is basically a formal look at that. It's a very, very entertaining book. I would strongly recommend when you read it, visualize as she gets into each room, like say a kitchen or living room. Visualize what you think is what is the norm. What do you sort of expect those rooms to have in them, and then read the particular chapters, but that's sort of comparing your view of it versus what she's talking about. Miller's work is part of a series he's done largely based on the digital. And this was sort of tied into that. His specialty now is actually a fascinating series of work looking at how social media is used in different cultures, which is the how we post. I think it's the name. That's University of London. Strongly recommend it. But this is one of his older works that was looking at when he was interested in basically consumerism and consumption, and how consumerism and consumption were driven by sort of socio-cultural expectations and norms. And he was wrote stuff because he wanted to sort of alert people that the amount of stress that they were spending trying to have things, to try to work hard to acquire things, was not personal based. It was actually based on a set of societal norms of expectations that people were sort of felt driven to fulfill. It's an excellent work. It's sort of grim in parts when you realize just exactly how hardwired we are for all of this, which is sort of what he's trying to get at. But again, an excellent work. I think you'll really enjoy it. If you get a chance and you're interested in Asian design, I strongly recommend Daniel's work, the Japanese House. We'll get into it later in the semester. But one of the interesting aspects of design is that, especially when you look at aesthetics and sort of, taste and style and function, oftentimes Japanese design is sort of portrayed as one of these, sort of incredibly sophisticated, aesthetically pleasing, very complicated, symbolically dense systems. What Daniel's actually looked at is how Japanese actually live in real houses, versus what you might see in, Design or some sort of architectural digest or something like that. Hugely fascinating, because she's actually talking to people and interviewing them and finding out why they do what they do, why they made the choices they made, and how different this looks than sort of the concept of the aesthetic. And again, so it's a real eye-opener when you realize that socio-cultural aspects of Japanese design are very different than the aesthetics, in many cases, almost entirely for foreign consumption that you see in Japanese design. So again, hugely entertaining if you get a chance, if you're interested in that area. You're going to be reading some of the articles out of Thrum's annuals. These are George Thrum was compiled, or was actually publishing almanacs from the 1870s on. And what he threw into the early almanacs, he started throwing in articles based on contemporary issues in Hawaii. In many cases, he had other folks writing articles based on Hawaiian culture. Especially because at the time there was a huge concern that Hawaiian culture and ethnicity was going to die out. So there was this need to sort of record it. The Thrum's annuals I compiled them years ago. We've had a very rare full set here at Chaminade in Sullivan Library. And the reason that they're tremendously useful is they're time capsules. When you look at an article written in 1881 about, say, the Hawaiian home, you're actually looking at a Hawaiian home written by someone who probably was alive, say, in the 1820s, 1830s, when that form of habitation was pretty much in its traditional form. It hadn't been hugely impacted by Western influences. So the Thrum's articles are great because they're time capsules of the past. They're people from the 1880s talking about the world they live in, their contemporary world, that now for us is 140 years in the past in many cases. A lot of the articles are hugely important when you're talking about the changes in, for example, urban and social networking, place and space here in the Hawaiian Islands, which is the ones you're largely looking at. Most of the articles are quite short. They're a couple of pages. They're basically like newspaper articles, if you want to think of them that way. Most of them are, I try to pick ones that are entertaining and interesting. So again, you're not reading most of the almanacs. You're just reading a couple of articles out of each, several of the volumes. So get those done. Okay, in terms of grading, let's go down here. The main part of this course is a little bit different. There's actually two aspects of grading here. The major aspect of grading, as in all the classes, we call it critical thinking exercises. And again, as in most of the classes, you have 5 of these. As we're going through the modules and materials, we're going through the different themes and stuff that we're going through. You're going to have to do a critical thinking paper on that, something of that module. I want you to pick something that was covered in that module that you found interesting. It can be personally interesting. It can be professionally relevant. I don't care, whatever floats your boat, go for it. Check with me before you start. But you have to do these, do them on schedule. Don't procrastinate and try to get them done late. Doesn't work very well. If we go down here, you actually see there's actually a template in terms of exactly what I'm expecting, what it should consist of, and how you get it. So you're going to be looking at something in more detail than we covered either in the material or, for example, in one of the videos. So you're going to go into more depth and look at it with a particular structure attached to it. Again, don't repeat the course materials. Obviously, you're supposed to be looking at something examining in more detail, but it's structured. They're not hard to do, but they do take time. So make sure you give yourself the time before they're due to just do them. Don't think you're going to knock them out in an hour or two on the due date. The second major, and that's the major part here, right? The second part is the group project. Right now, I'm not sure how many folks we're going to have on the course, so it's going to vary depending on how we play that. But generally, I want at least two teams or two companies, if you would. I'm going to develop a request for proposal for basically an RFP, we call it. So I'm going to basically give you a proposal generated by an agency or a company. And that's going to be your project. You're going to have to use the materials from this class and what you've learned from this class to basically, come up with a proposal to satisfy that request from that particular agency. So it could be a public housing project. It could be a condominium redesign. It could be a hotel conversion. I haven't decided yet. I'll come up with it in a couple of weeks. But that's basically what you're going to do. You have to apply the course material, and that's the function of this. To apply your course material and your creativity to basically come up with a solution to this proposal that this entity has asked for. This allows us to do two things. One is allows you to sort of synthetically, use the material that we've covered. Secondly, is it gets you used to something you're going to have to do for the rest of your professional careers, which is generate proposals, present stuff to clients, and basically, present yourself professionally to entities that basically, by virtue of giving you a check, are going to basically define whether you live in a house or whether you live in a car. So that's the group project is a reality check versus the more academic stuff like the critical thinking exercises. I think they're really useful. It's always been sort of a surprise to me that people haven't done more of this in their careers at university, because this allows you to basically do what you're going to do professionally without the risk of losing a contract, which professionally could pretty much wipe your career. So this also gets read by other people than myself. At least one external reviewer, who's either an interior designer, professional, and one for guaranteed B1, very possibly a developer, also looking at this also. So you're going to have this read by more than just me. So you have to present this think of this as the group's going to present this to a professional audience. The group gets a grade. You don't get an individual grade. All the members of that particular team, company, whatever we call it, get the same grade, just like you would at a company. You either get the contract, or you don't. So that's sort of a reality part. The Waikiki field trip, we were doing that virtually, obviously, with COVID. We can do that for real. So we'll be, you have the option. I would recommend actually doing the walk for real versus the virtual version. Again, there's directions down here. There's directions down here in terms of not only where I want you to go, it's very specific that I want you to walk in a particular direction, but also answer the questions. Answering the questions is what you submit for the grade. That's pretty good. So I think you'll find it really interesting. Even if you live in Waikiki, I can sort of guarantee you haven't looked at it the way that I'm asking you to look at it. Reaction papers, there's a number of videos in this class, as in all my classes. I give you a set of questions before you watch the videos. Answer the questions, that's the reaction paper. You get graded on doing them. You do not get graded on the quality of the writing and how long it is, so don't worry about it being multiple pages. Just react to it. It's to give you a reason to watch the video rather than just sort of, zoning out. And that's your grades for this class. It's fairly straightforward, I think. And it's, I think you'll find the class interesting. Obviously, I think it's interesting. Everyone developed it. I think it's a very valuable class, especially here in Hawaii. Though as we become more global, and especially as almost you as professionals will be working in some way, shape, or form globally. I think more and more this class is even more relevant than say it was 10 or 20 years ago when it was pretty much, sort of Hawaii specific. So that's it for the semester. Again, I'm not full-time anymore. I'm part-time. So, I do not have an office. So if you need to get in touch with me, the easiest way is email. If you want to, we can either set up a conference call or something else like that, or via Zoom. If we have some reason to meet as a group, we can do that either by Zoom or, I can go on campus if necessary. So I think we're all set. If you want to see the type of work that we're up to, which includes stuff like this, go to my website and you'll see the projects that I'm working on right now. Okay, with that, hope the semester goes well. Hope you enjoy the class, and we'll see you when you guys can sign into the class.